Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Hope you're doing excellently. This has been an excellent week on Rules for Retrogrades. Had a debate within the last calendar week. That was so much fun. Hugh Owen's got mad. Hugh Owen, whatever. Hugh Owen. He's singular, not plural. Hugh Owen got mad at the end, but it was a debate. I mean, that was the least stressful debate I've ever done. I'm not just saying that. That was far and away the least stressed I ever was during any public debate, and I've done many of them. And then a couple days later, had on Father Chad Ripperger, and my friend Frank, quite frankly, talked about angels, not the angels, talked about aliens, demons, SSPX, what's happening next week with the SSPX consecrations. Got a lot of good feedback there. And now we have this Allie Beth Stuckey interview. Now, first off, I want to say this. I challenge Allie Beth to debate anything as a biblical matter between myself and her at DebateCon October. And James from DebateCon, or Modern Day Debate is what it's called, is on board for this. She brought up so much stuff when she was talking to JD Vance that is material for debate. He was being nice. He was being polite. But she brought up so much to chew on that it was frustrating for me to sit there and just listen to it. So I can do this one-sided soliloquy model where I just play her clips and I tell you what I think. I'm going to do that today, of course. But that's not as gratifying as a debate. I've never debated a girl. I've never played a girl one-on-one in basketball. Sorry if I'm sweating. I was just out playing one-on-one in my driveway. Never played a girl, but at DebateCon in October, if we could do a 1Z, 2Z, 3Z thing, or a 3-part debate, you know, what is Israel in the Bible? Evangelical versus Catholic. What does wifely submission require from the Bible? Evangelical position versus Catholic position. And thirdly, of course, you know, what is the ideological origin of America? I know what the demographical origin is. It's a bunch of Protestants. It's not evangelical. It's Protestant, though. Congregationalist in the North. I guess that's sort of the roots of the evangelicals. And then Anglican in the South. But the ideological origin is all Catholic. And in celebration of America's 250th birthday, I would love to debate that third part. So 3-part debate with Allie Beth Stuckey. She'd be my first girl to debate ever, maybe my only girl I'd ever debate. I really don't like the idea of it, but there's just so much left up on the table, so many points left on the board when she talked to JD Vance. And my first thought is just, how does somebody, just some podcaster, get an interview with the Vice President of the United States of America? Can you guys believe this stuff happens? I've had big guests on the show. I'm going to have a couple big guests on the show later in the summer. It's going to blow your mind. But not the Vice President of the U.S. of America. Like, what's the deal? Does he have to have Secret Service come in? Do they have to? He comes to your house? Does this really happen? This isn't a cartoon. How do you line this up? Hey, I'm going to call the White House. Could I debate? Or I won't debate, but could I just have an interview with the president? It's fake. Anyone that is arranged for to have an interview with the president just seems like a spook. It just seems like you're a spook. How do you get this lined up? Obviously, I'm not asking because I never would, even though I'm I'm the same religion as the vice president, JD Vance. There's no way he would ever come talk to me. No way. And Ali Beth Stuckey just gets it lined up. And it's not a prestige thing or a skill of interviewer thing. You can tell. You be your own judge. When I play you the main clips, I really clipped, I clipped the living daylights out of this thing. So I'm giving you a really good sense of the whole interview. And it's just not, I just don't think, in all honesty, it was a really well-conducted interview. The last few ones that I've talked about were really good. You be your own, the judge. They talk about all three of these things: ideological origin of America, a little bit less so feminism, though it's hovering in the background, and a bit of Israel, and a lot of the means of converting and reverting to the Christian faith, which is all interesting stuff. In theory, I think there's a lot of stuff left up on the board. So you be the judge. But first, I want to remind you that it's summertime. You need to get to a red state. That's what you should be. If you're a conservative Christian, especially if you're a conservative Catholic, you ought to be in a red state. You shouldn't be in a blue state. If you have the latitude to make this change, not everybody does, but if you work from home, you have no excuse not to get out of your blue state, get to a red state today, particularly because if you go to www.realestateforlife.org, there will be a pro-life, pro-Catholic person that will help you make the move. It'll be easier, and you know you're supporting a good cause. www.realestateforlife.org. If you want to support this channel, do so by giving us money on locals, and you get cool stuff, sneak peeks. You get to interact some, and it's not just internet bit ink you get. We have started a program called the Parish Orphan Patron Pack, where you will actually get cool stuff in the mail for becoming a $13 a month or more supporter. You get 2 cool magnets, get a Steph Gordon retrograde chic hand-stitched craft like our memento mori here. It'll be a little skull. She does a few different designs. She'll autograph the back. Sticker, God Save the Patriarchy pin that has all the Bible verses written around it. It's sent in a really cool pack. I think hard goods are back because people don't just want to look at your PDF of your favorite poem that you wrote in the 12th grade. That's not the only thing that you should offer. I'm not saying I don't offer that. You can get my crappiest poetry, but I actually don't. But what I really want to offer you is hard goods. And I think that's what's especially worthwhile. So become a locals supporter today. That's how we keep the lights on around here. A lot of people want to donate. You can do so at www.timothyjgordon.com and click donate. That's different, though. That's not how we keep the lights on here. That's just people ask, how do I help? How do I help out Timothy Gordon, the man, not Timothy Gordon, the plan. Timothy Gordon, the plan is all on locals. Let's do this thing. So let's get started with our first clip. And I think it's interesting. I want to do this really systematically. I want to hear Ali Beth and JD talk a little bit. I want to hear what they have to say. I want to kind of let you air it out, and then I'll give you my commentary, because I have pretty strong commentary on everything they're saying here. So let's begin with the first clip in the thread.
Okay, perfect. Let me know in chat if you guys have a hard time hearing this.
There is a growing divide, it seems to me, on the right between evangelicals and Catholics. And maybe it just lives online. Maybe it's not so much in real life. But there's certainly this feeling, it seems to me, as an evangelical, that evangelicals are the reason that we're in a bunch of problems, why we haven't won as many wars or culture wars as we need to. The future of America and the future of conservatism is Catholic. It's tradcath, as the people say online. What is your take on that?
So my take on it is fundamentally, like, America was founded as a Protestant nation.
Yeah.
And, that said, there are definitely like seeds of Catholicism in the original American founding as well. Of course, Maryland was named Maryland and had deep connections to the Catholic Church. A lot of what was going on in the original Western conquest, the original European founding in the West, was very rooted in Catholicism. And so I guess I see these debates as a sort of very good continuation of something that's kind of always been true and always been in the background of American Christianity. And I'm a big believer, and maybe this is too optimistic, but like I believe that, I'm a Catholic. I believe in the core teachings of my faith, but I also think that there is a reason why there was a Reformation. There was a reason why the church kind of scattered. And ultimately, I just have a certain optimism, faith, a hope that God's going to figure all this out in the end. That the reason why we're having these arguments is because one of the ways that we come to know God is by trying to understand him. And one of the ways that we understand him is by debating between evangelicals and Catholics and trad Caths and Southern Baptists about all these issues. And so I do think that there are things to learn. Like, I think that one of the things that Catholics sort of have to learn from evangelicals is, why is it that if, one of the experiences I've had a number of friends who will walk into a Catholic church, they're extremely interested in it. They'll hear a beautiful homily. They'll be amazed by the sort of, magnificence of the mass and the music, but then nobody will talk to them afterwards. Everybody leaves and disappears and goes back to their own homes. Now, if you're part of the parish community, you very much are like part of the church community. But if you show up to like an evangelical church in Southwestern Ohio and nobody knows who you are, like 9 of them will ask you for donuts or coffee or to hang out afterwards. There is a spirit of welcoming there in the.
Okay, is that it? All right, so we're a little out of order here. Let's do. This is the Catholic Republic thing. This is where JD Vance is getting into giving propers to Protestantism and saying, well, look, America's Protestant. That's really not true. America was demographically Protestant from the very beginning, but it was always from the very beginning Catholic in idea. Ideological origins of America are exclusively Catholic. And I don't just mean more Catholic than Protestant. I mean, Protestantism rejected the natural law, natural rights tradition. Protestantism rejects the natural law proposition of subsidiarity. Protestantism rejects virtue ethics, which is so important to America. Protestantism rejects church-state relations, the way they would grow out of the Catholic tradition of cuius regio, eius religio. Protestantism rejects the kind of proper family economy that comes from, that grows into a free market economy. And Protestantism has the wholly wrong philosophy of nature to justify a proper science and technology sector. So it's like JD Vance wants to do this thing because he's talking to a known evangelical where he does the 2-step and he says, well, you guys do some things well, we do some things well. My Mima, or whatever he called his grandma, she always said, like she's the Pope, she always said, Jesus is all that matters. He'll figure it out in the end who is right between Catholics and Protestants. It's about 50-50. That's the strong impression he gives throughout the interview. You heard him say stuff like that on that clip. And that's just wrong. This guy became an adult Catholic. What kind of dolt? I mean, he's the vice president. I think there's some things he's probably okay on, but I do think he's a bit of a spook. I think he's a bit of a paper mache candidate for president. I think he's created. That's my belief. And it's like, what kind of legit adult convert to Catholicism isn't one of these on fire converts? It's a bit off-putting that he's saying this. I grew up in the church in the 80s and 90s, ecumenism stuff. That's not what the converts get now. The converts that come in as an adult are like on fire. So what really motivated that? If you're going to say, the Catholic Church is great for stasis and stability and unity, but no one asks you to eat donuts afterwards. That doesn't prove anything theologically, but he's saying it as if it's a concession. You're going to hear him return to this time and time and time again. He's going to keep saying his Mima, his grandma, who I guess kind of made him Catholic, just said, well, Jesus is really what matters. I didn't care for that right from the very beginning. Okay. So let's go to the top of this thread and we'll go, this will proceed in roughly the same cron order, if that's cool, Steffi.
Yeah. It was just that one came up first for some reason. I don't know why.
I'm not saying Catholics don't.
Here, let me see. Let me move this one.
I'm not saying Catholics don't ever do that, but it's so much more. It's so much more part of.
Yeah, this one says on this evening's are for our breakdown
Yeah,
of the.
that's.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's that one.
Yeah, it should be this.
This evening's are for our.
Yeah.
That's what I have.
Okay, sorry. So sorry about a little tech glitch. What can we get it? She starts saying something about debates.
Evangelicals is not only, doctrinal fidelity and being consistent on that, but the willingness to take that and take the.
Is it 35 seconds? Because that's what I have as the first one.
Yeah, that one should be it. Okay. Yeah, that should be 35 seconds.
Okay.
Why does Twitter do that? It
I'm not saying
reconfigures.
Catholics don't ever do that, but it's so much more part of the evangelical church tradition in the United States of America. At the same time, like what can evangelicals learn from Catholics? I do think that there is something to be said about the stability of doctrine, even if it doesn't necessarily take with every single member. There's something to be said about the stability of doctrine and the stability of the institution. And my sense is that, again, God's going to figure all this out in the end, and we'll all get to heaven. He'll tell us who was right and who was wrong about specific issues. But I think there's a purpose to this. There has to be, because we've been arguing about this stuff for 500 years, maybe even longer. And I think those arguments are fundamentally good, even if sometimes they're absurd.
Yeah, I love the debates. I think they're super.
I'm not saying Catholics.
Is that the 35-second guy?
Yeah.
Okay, that's weird. So here's. Sorry about this. Okay, let's go to the second one. So I already basically commented on that. He's saying Catholics have stability of doctrine, but Protestants are really personable and they really have community, man. And that's fine. It's fine to give some concessions. I just don't think that's a meaningful concession. Okay, let's go to the second
clip. ABS here says she thinks evangel. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Thanks. This is funny because she says doctrine in reference to
maybe I didn't notice it quite as much because I had been going, since the time that I was born. But something I really appreciate about evangelicals is not only, doctrinal fidelity and being consistent on that, but the willingness to take that and take those doctrines into the culture and to say, look, if God is the creator and the authority of all things, then that has to dictate what we think about life. That has to dictate what we think about all of these other issues as well. And when Christians don't do that, especially if evangelicals did do that, we'd be in a really bad spot.
No, I think that's exactly right. And I also think that, one of the subtexts of this argument that I'm making is I actually want us to have a more fulsome view of politics, not to withdraw from politics, but to actually engage on all of the issues. Because I remember my stepmom, who I'm still very close to, she's actually coming here in a week or two to help take care of our kids over July 4th, because we've got obviously a lot going on as a vice president.
Yeah.
And, one of the things she said to me, I'll never forget this, she was raised by a union man. And like a lot of people in my neck of the woods growing up, union Democrats, socially conservative, very Christian, but felt deeply alienated from the cultural direction of the Democratic Party. And I remember talking to her about politics, like, why are you a Republican? This is the Bill Clinton era. I was a teenager. And she's like, well, Republicans are for the rich, but at least they care about the unborn. And she, there was this idea that somehow Republicans tricked evangelicals to voting against their economic interests because they cared about the cultural war issues. The actual truth was much more interesting, which is that a lot of middle-class, working-class evangelicals, they didn't love the business elites of the Republican Party. They recognized they were making a choice between two imperfect options here. Yeah. So it was much more self-aware. And again, people are much smarter than I think the progressive movement was willing to give them credit for. But I do think that one of the takeaways, and frankly, to be a little biased here and a little partisan, one of the things that happened with the Trump movement, even though obviously the president is not a traditional evangelical Christian, is that he was actually willing to give voice not just to the cultural concerns of the Christian base, but some of the economic concerns. Like, why did you ship my job overseas?
Right.
Like, I want a pro-life politician. I want somebody who's protecting the family. I also want somebody who's going to protect my job. And that was, I think, always part of the power of the Trump movement, is that a woman like my stepmother, who was one of the first people who was ever really MAGA in my life, she was like, no. I actually want both of these things. And I kind of, one of the arguments I make here, and I really believe in, is I think Christians should be more assertive about their politics, but I think we should be assertive about our political views, both when it comes to matters of economics and the dignity of work. And we also have to be assertive, of course, about our views when it comes to matters of life or matters of the family.
Do you think your view?
So it's kind of an interesting segment in the interview, probably the most interesting and valid opinions that Vice President Vance gives, because he's talking about how there can be a populist movement on the right. That's basically what he's saying. For evangelical right-wingers who probably had Dixiecrat Blue Dog parents or grandparents, they want to be Christian, but they want the goodies, the spoils of economic populism, meaning don't just be willing to ship my job overseas to save money. The way the common characterization goes, they became populist MAGA Republicans. And that was kind of the story in 2016 what made Trump successful. But I would say this as well. This doesn't tell the story after 2020. It doesn't tell the story after 2024 at all. Like, populism isn't really what's in the air anymore. What's in the air is Israel. And people care about no new wars far more than they even care about not having jobs shipped overseas to factories. So while it's true that pro-lifers who care about the pro-life coalition and, broadly speaking, Christian issues that are endemic to social conservatism, they can want jobs too. Sure, that's true. I have no problem with them saying that. And I think he's describing rather aptly the coalition of voters that made for the first Trump win in 2016. I don't really think it counts anymore. I don't, that's not what's happened. Like, a big theme that Ali Beth kept returning to was, she would ask him, what's fracturing the Republicans? What's fracturing MAGA? And of course, that's Israel. And they both acknowledged this. It's insufficient the way he acknowledged it, but I think that's enough to just say it's a pretty good description of what happened in 2016. I don't think it's much of a description of what's happened in the last year and a half at all. Okay, so that's that. Let's get to some more concessions he makes. Do Protestants ever make good points? There are two clips here.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes. I mean, so many.
Gosh, it keeps like picking the wrong.
Twitter gets weird.
Yeah. Sorry, just a second.
Yeah, if you zoom in on it, we're always trying to, for these clip shows, trying to grab them in a more efficient way. This might be it.
Okay. Yeah.
You talk about you and Charlie kind of discussing this and having these debates. And I'm curious, not necessarily about y'all's private conversations, but is there anything that he or Protestant ever said that you're like, huh, that's kind of a good point? Because there are certainly things that I see as that from the evangelical perspective when I'm reading, say, Aquinas or Chesterton.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes. I mean, so many.
So yeah, I'll let you. The second one is his answer, but I'll just say this: it's kind of a good little pause juncture, because she says, when I'm looking over Aquinas or Chesterton, maybe she's done that with Chesterton, and I know there are a lot of Catholics that I kind of give a hard time to that will pretend I'll do a little bedtime reading of Aquinas. That's not the way that the medieval disquisition, the Summa tradition, which is supposed to be the easiest thing that Aquinas wrote, it's not the way that it was intended to be read. And it makes me disbelieve anybody that's like, oh, I was doing a little reading of Chesterton. Chesterton's like an essayist. He had some quippy stuff to say, but I don't really think Chesterton is a serious thinker. He's not a philosopher, he's not a theologian. Quippy points sometimes, aphoristic kind of thinker, pleasing to read. And you can read a page or two or three before bed, but I don't believe that Ali Beth Stuckey has read something even as basic as Thomas's Summa Theologiae. Then you take further steps in and you're reading the Summa Contra Gentiles, and then you take more steps in and you're getting to his actual manuals and his treatises, shorter treatises on metaphysics. And it gets harder and harder and harder from there. But I don't think that you could really, because the medieval schoolmen that comprise the real intellectual heart of the Catholic Church, the mind of the Catholic Church, if you will, that's what an intellectual heart is, can be taken asystematically. You can't order a la carte from Aquinas. So you can't go, oh, cool point, Tom. That's not how it works. And it proves the superficiality of the thinker. Of course, this is very, very, very female Ali Beth Stuckey, very, very evangelical, turbo normie Ali Beth Stuckey. So it's not like I should be surprised, but this is a shockingly superficial remark. Sometimes when I'm reading Aquinas or Chesterton, I'll have Legally Blonde on in the background. I'll just gotten a mani-pedi, and I'll be reading Aquinas, and Chesterton at the same time. And I'll think that's a really good point, Tom and G. And I'll tell my husband this, they made the sharpest point. I want to give kudos. That's not the way it really works. Starting with Aristotelianism, Thomism in the scholastic tradition is very systematic. So it's very difficult to, in earnest, read Thomas Aquinas and be like, well, that's true. This point is absolutely true without just becoming a Thomist, which is why everybody who's smart is a Thomist. Okay, so he answers the question in the next clip. What are some good Protestant points? That's
yeah. Well, I mean, yes. I mean, so many things. But the point that you made is a point that Charlie has made to me in the past, which is, one of my favorite Bible verses, and indeed one of the things that kind of got me back on the pathway of faith is, "By your fruits you shall know them." And what are the fruits of a given person's faith? The Bible makes a couple of simultaneously absurd but very compelling arguments to me about human nature, which is that God chooses to reveal himself through people described in the Bible as rapists, murderers, sinners of the very worst kind, but who find redemption through grace. Now, again, if you're a skeptic, you might say, well, if this faith is true, why doesn't it just automatically transform people? But if you're, I think, a student of human nature who is also Christian, you would say, well, this is actually kind of like weirdly how it works, is the transformation is bumpy. You take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And I think that one of the things that Protestants, particularly evangelicals, have said to me that I find quite compelling is that for all of my, I think, true arguments about this institutional stability, it's exactly what you said, that there is this way in which the American Catholic Church has become quite assimilated into secular culture. And is that the best fruit? And my argument would be, my counter-argument to that would be no, but that what we're really seeing is, in some ways a purification of both the Protestant and the Catholic churches, which is that the people who are participating in the rich community life of each church are getting closer and closer to God. And unfortunately, we just have a culture that has moved in a very secular direction. Catholicism is not immune to that, but I do think that it is very much, it is a ship in a very troubled water.
Yeah.
See, I don't like this. I don't like when you're doing discourse with a member of the arch heresy, the Protestant arch heresy. The sum of all heresies is early modernist Christianity, aka Protestantism. It's like a bunch of heresies rolled into one, which is also funny when she says evangelicals guard doctrine. They don't even have a way of defining doctrine. There's no such thing. They don't have doctrine. They just have a bunch of people reading a sacred text, the sacred text of the Catholic Church saw fit to canonize, and they saw fit to gut the books that they actually kept of the Bible. They don't read the whole Bible. They read it in common. It's a text in common. There's no doctrines for them. They all make up what they want to believe about every text. And most Protestants are fine with divorce and remarriage, even though Jesus says outright, and the church teaches magisterially, there's no divorce. But she still insists on saying, well, we have doctrine. It's absurd. It's a reductio. It's offensive when JD Vance sits down with a Protestant and he does a tit for tat. Well, you say something nice about Catholicism, I'll say something nice about Protestantism. I don't like that. I don't like that. Are there things that are nice about Protestants? Yeah. Is there really anything redeeming about Protestantism? Nothing. There's really nothing redeeming about Protestantism. And here's why. It's not the church. You can call it Christian because it's a bunch of people who happen to be gathered together, not united by anything, but if they've all had a Trinitarian baptism and they're reading the Bible together, they're kind of accidentally there together. So Pope Benedict said you can call them a congregation, but it's not even like Eastern Orthodoxy where there are churches with apostolic bishops, priests, sacraments, sacramentals, and some of the marks of the church. To say evangelicals, Protestants have none of the 4 marks of the church from Nicaea. You have to remember this. So there's nothing nice you can say about Protestantism, any form of it, any of its 40,000 forms. You shouldn't be praising it. It is the arch heresy. Things change when you're talking about the Eastern Church that ran into schism, has been partially healed, gone back and forth. It's a little different. It's a difference of kind. This is the distinction of degree, that you can make for Protestants. You can say, look, there are tons of nice Protestant people. I live around so many of them. And a lot of them are good people because of their baptism and because of the grace that comes from that, which is mysterious. It works in mysterious ways, but they don't have confession. They don't have communion. All they have is the Bible and their baptism, and that is like bare minimum. It's like you're packing a long trip across a 100-mile hike out of the desert, and you want to carry as much water as you can, right? Is life or death. And you're like, no, like I got this big canteen. It's extra big. Don't load me up with water. I don't want to get a little sweaty. You know, that's the people that think Protestants are going to be okay. Maybe they are. Maybe some exquisite athletes, people with glandular issues that don't sweat too much can make it out of the desert on a hike with just a big canteen of water if they ration it perfectly. They get lucky. It's a windy day. They sweat less. It's maybe, I don't think it's ever a cloudy day there, but it's like willingly foregoing extra canteens of water when you're setting out on a 100-mile desert trek. It's just retarded. So JD Vance is talking about Protestantism in this indifferentist way, the arch heresy, the Christian arch heresy, Protestantism. He's saying Jesus will sort it out in the end. You guys have strengths. We have strengths. He's seeing strengths there that I don't even agree with. So what? I don't want to hang out at donuts and coffee. Sorry, I just don't. I got 8 kids, a wife. We go and get donuts with the fam every Sunday morning after church. I want to go shoot hoops, which I do after we get back. We want to go do family stuff. So I don't think that's a flaw. That's not the same thing with saying, okay, now say something nice about the arch heresy. You know, what do we do that's pretty cool? Okay, maybe they're nice people. But to go like quid pro quo, tit for tat, take turns saying nice things, alternate compliments, I don't like it at all. And it's misleading. It's important to say Protestants have 0 of the 4 marks of the church. They have 0. 1 holy Catholic apostolic. They're not one. There's 40,000 congregations. They're not holy. They have 1 of the 7 sacraments. Holy means sacramental, right? They only have 1 of the 7 sacraments, and it's kind of qua lay baptism, which counts, but it's not really through their church. It's qua whichever man baptized you. They don't have any of the sacraments that require an actual apostle. Catholic, it's definitely not the same anywhere you go around the world. There's nothing universal about it. And it's not apostolic. So they have no bishops. Now, I always congratulate Eastern Orthodox. I'm like, look, you guys have 2 of the 4 marks of the church. They're not 1. They got 14 autocephalous churches. It's holy because they have all 7 sacraments. They got 7 out of 7. They have no fewer sacraments than we do. So it's an X when it comes to 1. They got 14 churches. And they lack the visible mark of unity on earth, which is the Pope. So not 1, X. But for Czech, is it holy? Yeah, it's holy. It's 14 churches that should be 1. They would be 1 under the banner of the Pope. But it is united by the holiness of those 7 sacraments. Is it Catholic? No. That's why they can't. It's so difficult to have like a pan-Orthodox council. Again, because they lack the visible sign of unity on earth to call the council. This is why Solovyov told Dostoevsky, Papa takes Papa to call the squabbling brothers to the table. Takes a pope, takes a father. And apostolic, yes. Then they do have real bishops that are real apostles standing in the sandals of the real apostles. There's a lineage there. It's not like the Anglicans that just say they have bishops. And they ordain priests that are valid and real. Okay, so they got 2 out of the 4. That's pretty good. They don't have 4 out of the 4. But it's a lot easier to take a religion seriously. One, when you can, it's got the 2 of 4 marks of the Roman, of the one true Christian church that it requires to be called a church. So they are the eastern half of the church. They're always the Greek lung. We were the Western Latin lung in Rome. And then they split off, and they lack those two other of the four marks. But with Protestants, it's just you can't play this game. You can't do the same thing you would do if you're talking to even an Orthodox guy. You can't do it. Okay, let's go to the next. I don't like that he's doing it. I understand why he's doing it. It's the precise reason he wouldn't come on a show like this or any interesting show. He wouldn't go on even Dave Smith's show. He wouldn't go on Tom Woods' show. You know, we don't have to all agree about economics, but guys that are hard hitting, that aren't just magatards, they would ask real questions, like Dave Smith, Tom Woods, any of those guys. They're friends with Thomas DiLorenzo. Wouldn't go talk to them. Wouldn't have a sit down with them. Not going to go have a sit down with any of the other trad cats that do this. But he'll chum it up with Allie Beth Stuckey. It get this living like this on the fringes gets frustrating. Okay, let's go to that next clip, please.
And it's Protestant lacks all four marks.
Yes. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's something that, you know, a lot of my Catholic friends will tell me, is that they love the uniformity of it and the unity of it. And I totally understand why that's appealing. I'm going to ask you a question that I ask my Catholic friends, and it's a true curiosity. When you look at the statistics of what people who profess to be Catholics believe about things like abortion, things like sexuality and gender, they're much more likely to be progressive than, say, the average evangelical. Evangelicals are kind of in some ways the lone bulwark on these things, much less likely to support those progressive causes. And so I do wonder, if the Catholic Church has been so consistent on all of these issues, and I hear a lot that Protestants have been inconsistent, I do wonder why evangelicals are so much more united on what the Bible says about these issues than Catholics generally are.
Yeah, I've thought about this question, and I don't know if this is going to be a satisfactory answer, but I think part of it is that cultural Catholicism is much more powerful than cultural Protestantism. What I mean is that if you are a Protestant and you fall away from your faith, you're much more likely to just say you're not a Protestant anymore, or you're not a Christian anymore. Whereas if you're a Catholic and you largely fall away from your faith, there still is this sense of sort of identification with the Catholic faith, even if you yourself are not going to church regularly. But I think if you look at evangelicals who go to church regularly and Catholics who go to church regularly, you see a remarkable amount of harmony and synthesis about the core issues that matter.
Yeah. There is a growing divide. It seems.
Okay, I think this was probably Vice President Vance's best answer in the whole interview. Why is there sometimes on the social issues more unity among evangelicals, even though they lack the visible unity of the pontiff? There are 40,000 sects of Protestants. There's one sect of Roman Catholicism. Why do American evangelicals speak more univocally with one voice than American Catholics, who in the boomer heyday, Catholics represented a more liberal than conservative voting bloc? And he gives a pretty good answer. He's like, because all of those libs and douchebags on that side of things are cultural Catholics. They just say, I was raised Catholic. I was baptized Catholic. Maybe some of them were confirmed Catholic, but they're not going to church once a week, going to confession once every 2 weeks or 1 week. No. If you talk to those people, they're a far, I mean, if we talk about goes every week to the TLM, now all of a sudden it's 98.5% agreement about LGBTQ, abortion, anything you want to ask socially. Left, right, social litmus test, you're going to get 98.5%, way more consensus at the TLM than you will get at the most right-wing evangelical church. So that's pretty much the solution. He knocked it out of the park, I would say. Well, I mean, he doesn't really understand all of this perfectly, but he gave a really pretty good answer there. That's my favorite answer he gives. And again, she doesn't even know that technically Protestants are supposed to affirm the Council of Nicaea. So she doesn't understand the four marks of the church and all that, but the answer I gave to the last question. But JD does a pretty good job circumnavigating it and explaining people that say that they're Catholics because they once were, engage in what we call cultural Catholicism. They're just retards, for one. They're just agnostic atheists that have given up the faith. What they are really is apostates. And there's not, there's no meaningful distinction within Protestantism to call yourself, because you're not bound sacramentally. Aside from a baptism, you're not bound by confirmation or a weekly, monthly process of confession, communion, confession, communion, confession, communion. That's all the practice of the faith really is. If you don't have those two sacraments, I mean, confirmation adds force to what I'm saying, but if you don't have confession, communion, confession, communion, confession, communion, that's our life, sacramentally speaking. Yeah, you get baptized once, you get confirmed once, you get married once, you know, you either become a priest once or you get married, and you die once, so you get like extreme unction once. But the practice of the Catholic faith is really 2/7 of those sacraments, really constitute 7/7 of our life. Confession, communion, confession, communion. So for a Protestant, we don't really talk about someone being a cultural Protestant. If they're not going to church now, they're not a Christian. That's the way it's looked at. There's nothing binding them, holding them in. Whereas with Catholics, there's this whole 2,000-year culture, the only true culture in the history of the world, of confession, communion, celebrating all those feast days, which are really sort of the emphasis points on our life, which is comprised in the faith of alternating confession and communion. That's what the Ember Days are, the feast days, the high day, the holy days of obligation. You know, special days in the year we have to do certain stuff, fasting. All of that is a sacramental church calendar, like give and take, rhythm of life, expression of confession, communion, confession, communion. So she's just saying, why is there, if you look at it a very certain Allie Beth Stuckey normie way, why is there more consensus among American evangelicals than among American Catholics? Because in the block of what you're calling American Catholics are a bunch of non-Catholics, a bunch of apostates. There's not really, because we have a church, we could talk about having people who have apostatized from the church. Right? So could the Eastern Orthodox. But with Protestants, they don't even have a church. They're just congregations. So you're either kind of, we used to say this when we were straight edge, right? If you're not straight edge now, then you never were. You know, if you sell out, then it doesn't matter. You weren't once a Protestant because they don't have a culture. So cultural Protestantism isn't a thing. Cultural Catholicism is. There's a more of a binding force there, which is what's good. It's a means of calling those people back to the fold. Anyway, I thought his answer was respectable. Let's go to that next one, please. I thought his answer was pretty respectable there.
The future of America is Tradcath.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a growing divide, it seems to me, on the right between evangelicals and Catholics. And maybe it just lives online. Maybe it's not so much in real life. But there's certainly this feeling, it seems to me, as an evangelical, that evangelicals are the reason that we're in a bunch of problems, why we haven't won as many wars or culture wars as we need to. The future of America and the future of conservatism is Catholic. It's Tradcath, as the people say online. What is your take on that?
So my take on it is fundamentally, like, America was founded as a Protestant nation.
Yeah.
And, you know, that said, there are definitely like seeds of Catholicism in the original American founding as well. Of course, Maryland was named Maryland and had deep connections to the Catholic Church. A lot of what was going on in the original Western conquest, the original European founding in the West, was very rooted in Catholicism. And so I guess I see these debates as a sort of very good continuation of something that's kind of always been true and always been in the background of American Christianity. And I'm a big believer, and maybe this is too optimistic, but like, I believe that, you know, I'm a Catholic. I believe in the core teachings of my faith, but I also think that there is a reason why there was a Reformation. There was a reason why the church kind of scattered. And ultimately, I just have a certain optimism, faith, a hope that God's going to figure all this out in the end. That the reason why we're having these arguments is because one of the ways that we come to know God is by trying to understand him. And one of the ways that we understand them is by debating between evangelicals and Catholics and Tradcaths and Southern Baptists about all these issues. And so, like, I do think that there are things to learn. Like, I think that one of the things that Catholics sort of have to learn from evangelicals is why is it that if, one of the experiences I've had a number of friends who will walk into a Catholic church, they're extremely interested in it. They'll hear a beautiful homily. They'll be amazed by the sort of, magnificence of the mass and the music, but then nobody will talk to them afterwards. Everybody leaves and disappears and goes back to their own homes. Now, if you're part of the parish community, you very much are like part of the church community. But if you show up to like an evangelical church in Southwestern Ohio and nobody knows who you are, like 9 of them will ask you for donuts or coffee or to hang out afterwards. There is a spirit of welcoming there in the evangelical.
Wait, you have to, they'll ask the stranger for donuts, the donuts or coffee. The stranger has to bring, I think he meant they'll ask you, do you want donuts or coffee? Of course, this is on the heels of his really, really best answer, right before he gave this answer. This is, I think, is the most ridiculous, most intellectually impoverished, least understanding answer. It just sounds like a total neophyte, sounds completely intellectually superficial. So he says, I think we both have to learn from each other. I think that's really important. I mean, if you ever find yourself saying this about the fundamental truth of the creator and the creation of the universe, with arch heretics, we should learn from each other. Then you're out of ideas. He didn't have a lot to say there, and you probably kind of, if you listen to this, wish he had it back. Because if the best thing he can say when Allie Beth asks him, what do you admire about Protestants, is, I really like how you guys share donuts and coffee, not just with the regulars, but with a first time attendee, not a celebrant, that would be the priest, not a congregant, that would be a Catholic faithful, but whatever, someone that stops in on vacation at your Protestant, whatever you call it, you got a little book club, someone stops in, okay, you're welcoming. That says more about there are a lot of nice people who are Protestants. Like I said before, I've always thought so. There's a lot of good people. I moved to a Protestant state, okay? Mississippi is, poll after poll, year after year, considered the most Christian state culturally in the country. You can ask Grok right now. Grok it right now if you're watching this on Twitter. What's considered the most Christian state in America? Grok, what is the most conservative and the most Christian state in America? It's Mississippi. That's why we moved here. But I also am smart enough to realize I don't need, and I have friends. We have friends staying over tonight. That's who I was playing one-on-one with. I don't need the superficial, like, constant company of small talk strangers at Catholic donuts and coffee. Okay, so Protestants are good at that. Whatever. That says more about living in the South, or maybe Wisconsin, or wherever you get these Baptist, large groupings of Baptists that they're good about welcoming people into the fold. Okay, that says more about probably their ethnicity, all those chubby Wisconsinians, all of these hunting, fishing Mississippians, whatever. That's fine. It says more about the locality and the folks involved than it does about what's binding about our Christian faith community. So I found this really bad. It's religious indifferentism at its worst. And you expect more from an adult convert to Catholicism. We got used to in the 90s, early aughts, even the 20 teens, the converts being the most on fire, having the best answers. Why are you Catholic? They're like, because I tried Orthodoxy, they have no unity. I tried Orthodoxy, they have the same Protestant problems of moral theology. They capitulated in 1930, just like the Protestants did, to the condom lobby at the Anglican Lambeth Conference. They have divorces and remarriages. And it's all because they lack that unity of a pope, even though we've had all these terrible popes recently. And you can ask a convert, well, what about Protestantism? They're like, don't even get me started. There's 100 reasons. I'm just going to give you the top 50. You're going to sit here and listen to the first half of my very good 100 reasons why I hated Protestantism and I needed Roman Catholicism to truly have Jesus. But I want, what we've been doing, what we've been living through the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years is the re-embrace of the church by cradle Catholics like myself. Usually we have to say we're reverts. Let me put it that way. But we're kind of taking the bull by the horns back from the converts. You had Scott Hahn and all of these converts to the faith that were really on fire and were really influential around the turn of the century and the early aughts. Well, in this generation, millennials and Zoomers, it's a lot of cradle Catholics like myself that have become influential again. And that's good. But we still have that high expectation for guys like JD Vance that stopped being evangelical, came into the church as an adult. This guy you're usually expecting to know all the big names of the First Vatican Council, know all the big names of the, Trent, guys that do actually read deep texts from St. Thomas, that actually know what they're talking about, know the difference between Suarez's worldview and Bellarmine's. A lot of people don't know the difference between Suarez and Bellarmine. I have friends like this that are converts that are just on fire. JD Vance really whiffed here. He didn't sound like he knows much about evangelicalism, what little there is to know, or Roman Catholicism, in all honesty. Okay, next one, please.
Sure. That's Israel and conversion.
Is it? I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
It's so annoying. How
this
is not your fault. It jumbles them in the most retorted fashion. Twitter when you do.
Hopefully this one is right. Sorry.
Exactly. Memo once said to me about this: all that matters is Jesus. And I think that if that's the anchor, you recognize that when we have these theological arguments, the anchor is Jesus Christ. It's all going to work out in the end.
Is that it? So someone has, and look, I'm not a spiritual master. Okay, I try to make really plain. Sometimes my mind wanders during rosaries. I've been trying to get the Angelus down over the last year, and I'm not a creature of habit. I mean, everyone's somewhat a creature of habit, but like I say, I'm not one of these guys like some of my good friends have a kneeler set up in the closet. It's a prayer room. They do mental prayer 2 hours a day. I mean, look, I'm not pretending I'm like a spiritual Sherpa when it comes to how to grow deeper in Christian mysticism, monasticism, martyrdom. My friend Joseph always called this the 3 M's: mysticism, martyrdom, monasticism. These 3 M's were called from the great Eastern tradition that the Eastern Orthodox champion, but is still part of our tradition because it's in the first millennium. It's called to be a normal constitutive part of being a Christian. We think, oh, mystics, they're these special wizard guys that are in touch with cosmic stuff. Martyrs, these guys are the guys with huge cojones that just go all the way to the wall. Monks, these are the really, really hardcore religious within religious within religious. No, we're all called to live out mysticism, monasticism, and a willing martyrdom, at least white martyrdom, every day. And we just don't. And I'm not saying I'm this spiritual master, but it's spiritually bankrupt when you hear a grown man like JD Vance saying every question he gets that he has to think a little bit, he goes, oh, Mima said this. Mima said that. She's not the Pope. What do I care what your grandma said? Look, here's what I care. I'm glad that you saw your way to cross the Tiber and to join the true fold. I don't know which of that is calculated, if any, because Catholicism's on the ascent, but I'm glad to have JD Vance as a Catholic. I want to encourage him. Learn more about your faith. There's a lot to learn. And it's really fascinating too. It's not dorky nerd stuff to learn about church history. But it's a yellow flag when every time you have to think, you're going, well, here's what Mima said. or mommy, mama. Or I forget what he calls her, but it's like Mima. And he just keeps saying like, well, what would, any answer where he has to go to the, your eyes go up and to the left when you have to go to recall or think a little deeper. He's either going WWCD bracelet. What would Charlie do? I'm so sick of that. It's not even a year. God bless Charlie Kirk. I hope he's up in heaven. He seemed like a nice man. His wife is a wreck. She's a terror. And I'm just sick of hearing about it. And I'm sick of the WWCD invisible bracelets, I imagine, on the wrists of all of these machine conservatives. I don't care what Charlie would have done. He's not a saint. Seemed to be a decent, honest man. What happened to him is horrible. I prayed for him. I kind of want to stop talking about Charlie Kirk, okay? But if it's not that, JD Vance is going to a bunch of WWCD. He's going to what would Meemaw say? I don't care. It's not just going to be okay if you love Jesus. You have to enter the church. You need the sacraments. You need to live a Christian life. It's impossible to live a Christian life if you don't have confession, communion, confession, communion, confession, communion. That's what our lives are. I tell my kids this when they're receiving their first confession and communion. These are the only repeat ones. These are the most important ones. I mean, baptism is in an efficient causation way. Getting last rites is in a kind of final causation way. But he doesn't seem to understand, and that's really basic.
This is what you're reduced to, though, when you're talking to like friendly Protestants. You have to start talking about what Meemaw said and like little like catchy, cutesy little statements, because you can't talk about anything substantial.
Right.
All these like catchy phrases and Southern, like you have to be high on a
Mississippi grasshopper.
You have to start using phrases like that when you're talking about the faith, because they don't really have anything intellectual to offer.
No.
God bless them. They just don't.
Well, but I find no, you're right. I agree with you. Like, full stop. I agree with that statement, Stevie, but it's a little different with Allie Beth Stuckey because I don't find her so friendly. The mom is, as Greg pointed out, it's like she dithers frequently within 1 minute clips between I'm just a mom with a webcam and then the power broad, the power evangelical Zionist shill, woman shill, Paula Jones or whatever. What's that crazy?
Paula White,
the
crazy witch with the talons.
Yeah. The crazy witch with the talons who speaks in tongues. Allie Beth gives off some of those vibes. I'm not saying she has talons and she doesn't necessarily speak in tongues, but so it's a little less avuncular because she's trying and failing. Allie Beth is to be a little more sophisticated in her approach to evangelicalism, which is hilarious, which is, I guess, why she has to purport to read St. Thomas and G.K. Chesterton. I find that funny. So I would just say it's disappointing because I've always been curious. What kind of Catholic is JD Vance? He's friends with Scott Hahn, but he hasn't labored to learn much, I don't think. And he's just being really, really, really friendly. Okay. These answers are too friendly. They're a bit too friendly for me. That doesn't mean, so you'll say something like that, and then the next time I have someone on the show, they're like, oh, you're being so polite. Well, I'm a polite guy. I'm actually a friendly guy. I'm confrontational, but very like warm and friendly. This is starting to sound super gay, but I'm both at the same time. I'm just like, well, but you said that. Oh, no, you're right. Okay, there's that. Or you said that, and I still kind of think this. Let me ask you that. Whereas they're not being openly confrontational here, and the interview is suffering from the lack of just, it's not just all going to be okay for Protestants.
Well, that's what makes an interesting interview for most people who do that, is that there is a good mixture of asking questions that are going to have like a happy clappy answer and an answer that, maybe raises an eyebrow or two. You know,
Yeah,
that's
but
what people like, is when you have a bit of a confrontation. You don't have to be a jerk about it, but certainly you can be a bit more confrontational in an interview like this, and it'll be very interesting for those listening.
you can be nice. You don't have to seem like Andrew Dice Clay. I was showing you Andrew Dice Clay videos the other night. You don't have to be like, hey, you don't have to have a Botafuco approach. But you do have to be willing to say, well, no, here's why I disagree with you. And I've considered it from that perspective, your perspective, if you have. And here's why I ultimately decided against looking at it that way. Or here's why the logic forced me. Maybe it'll be compelling to you too. Maybe it'll be compelling to the reader as well. Maybe someone could actually convert one of these mouthpieces like Allie Beth Stuckey. But I think there has to be sincerity first. And I don't know how sincere she is. Okay, let's go to the next one.
I think that was still the Israel one.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if it still works.
You talk about you and Charlie kind of discussing this and having these debates. And I'm curious, not necessarily about y'all's private conversations, but is there anything that he or Protestant ever said that you're like,
I don't know why it's doing this to me.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. This is not Steph's fault. This is the way we use Twitter is the easiest way to call these clips up, but it's not that easy because
that's kind of a good point. That's
Exactly. It's
a point. Because
now it's just starting. So that's fun.
Yeah, how about this? Let's see. Here's just something I think good about fatherhood.
Vantage point, it seems to me like the bigger problem is
Yeah, we can.
I don't know exactly how I would describe it in a way that would be charitable, but almost like Israel derangement syndrome, going beyond, okay, yeah, we don't like Israeli policies. We don't think that we should put the priorities of any country first. Completely agree with that. That's fine. But the obsession that some people have, I would say on the right, with blaming all of their problems on Israel, all of their disagreements with Trump on some secret Israeli influence, I see that more prominently on the right than I see true Israel first kind of obsession that you seem to be describing.
So I see both, and I think both are bad. And, you know, I'm probably particularly sensitive to the first thing because of the last 2 days I've been defending the president's decision to end the Iran deal. And I find often the arguments are, well, Israel doesn't think this is good, therefore it's bad. And my reaction is, Israel's opinions matter, but fundamentally they are separate. But you're right. I mean, there are certainly people who take every frustration with the Trump administration, every policy disagreement becomes because of Israel. And that's absolutely wrong. And again, I think that is one of those things that can bleed into some very dark places.
Yeah.
So I think that it's upon us as leaders, as public commentators, to just try to be very rational about this, to try to distinguish what is legitimate disagreement from ethnic hatred. And you just got to be careful about it. But I actually think both the Trump administration, but the right generally, is in a place of figuring this stuff out. Any debate, every debate has excesses on either side, but that's part of the process of figuring this stuff out together.
That music.
That music's so funny. Yeah, I guess a lot of disappointing answers. Is there Israel derangement syndrome? No. Here's why. When we've been lied to for our whole lives, starting with the creation of Israel, and it's involved demonizing Islam. Now, as someone that thinks it's proper to demonize both Islam and Judaism, I don't want you guys to hear me incorrectly, but there's gonna be a pendulum swing that ought to be anticipated and make sense to someone like Allie Beth Stuckey, which is like, isn't this Israel derangement syndrome? Yes, some people blame their wife's weight problem on Israel. I literally saw this on Twitter today, which is kind of hilarious. And that is going too far. But it's natural for there to be a pendulum swing back because for so long, neocons by design used agitprop to basically say that all of America's problems were the fault of Islam. Right? I mean, that's still alive and well on the neocon, I guess, zeocon right today. Depends, if you mean historical neoconservatism that ended in the late 1970s, but and now it's zeoconservatism or ziocon, whatever. But whatever you want to call it, the machine Republicans, Israel has a handler for every single congressman aside from a small handful. And they're still pushing this. They still haven't acknowledged this. They still haven't rectified this. They being the machine commentators and the machine politicians themselves. They're still not even squarely addressing the issue. Why does everyone have a handler? That's so odd that Israel really does control our politics this much. And there's a certain point where she asks JD, where are you at it and on this question? And he's like, well, I hate the ethnic pushback on Judaism and Jews. I'm like, I mean, I don't think you need to hate it, right? No, there's no one out there that's going to go like burn a cross in someone's front yard. That's not what's going to happen. I think you should expect it. People have been lied to about the Middle East since 1948, since before I was alive, and people resent it. And it's pretty much that simple. And Islam, because they don't, you know, the Zeocons have not just said, oh, the whatever theocracies that are Islamic in the Middle East ever since before 2001, especially after 2001. They say Islam, or they'll sometimes say radical Islam. But if that's a controlling interest, it's Islam. They're carnal men, as Thomas Aquinas says. Well, but it's the same thing. It's not just Israel. It's also Judaism. We got a problem with everybody. Like Woody Harrelson says in Out of the Furnace, I got a problem with everybody who's not Christian. And we want to have lots of fighting and working things out even within Christendom. But definitely Jews and Muslims, you guys cause a lot of problems in the world in different ways. And so it's not derangement syndrome when it comes to Israel. So again, he gave a really, really safe answer that I didn't love. I did not love the answer there. Let's see what he says here. Yeah, and you guys, we'll take call-ins if you want to call in and have a comment about Allie Beth or Vice President Vance. I mean, I thought this is it's a unique opportunity she was blessed with for an interview, and I just think, boy, it could have had so much, could have gone so differently. A safe answer that I didn't love. I did not love the answer there. Sorry.
No, that sounds like you.
That is me.
I don't know exactly how to describe it in a way that would be charitable, but almost like Israel derangement syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond, okay, yeah. Disagreement that we have on the right that's especially erupted after Charlie was assassinated is about Israel's role in American politics and the argument over whether or not they have an outsized influence here in the U.S. And so what is your take on that? Do you believe that Israel has an outsized influence in the U.S.?
Well, I certainly think that Israel, like a lot of other countries, tries to influence American politics. I sort of take that.
Note the lack of an answer. It's a yes/no question. Do you believe Israel has an outsized foreign influence on American politics? Yes or no? Let's give him another. Let's start it from the beginning.
Another disagreement that we have on the right that's especially erupted after Charlie was assassinated is about Israel's role in American politics and the argument over whether or not they have an outsized influence here in the U.S. And so what is your take on that? Do you believe that Israel has an outsized influence in the U.S.?
Well, I certainly think that Israel, like a lot of other countries, tries to influence American politics.
See, that's not the question.
I take that as a given. And what I think is that American leaders have to be very careful that when we pursue something, we're doing it for America's best interest and not for any other country's best interest.
He hasn't said
And
anything.
if you go back, let's say, to World War II, there were these extraordinarily strong disagreements between General Eisenhower and General Montgomery about military strategy.
That analogy
Those
has no import.
Are a natural part of having a partner. And I do think that sometimes, like, the opinion that I disagree with is, on the one hand, people will say that America's interests are always aligned with Israel's interests. It's just not true. And I see this every day in the conversations that we have and the back and forth. And obviously, the president has been very clear. He's got some disagreements with Bibi Netanyahu about how precisely to bring the Iran war to a close. And then I think there are some people who will say that Israel's interests are never aligned with America's. And I think that's also not true. I think the reality is,
this is such a bad answer. This is such a Mitt Romney, John McCain, early 2000s politics answer, just machine Republican answer. She asked him a very direct question. Does Israel have an outsized influence on our politics? Yes or no? And all he says is, well, some people say that our interests nationally never align with Israel and they're wrong, because that's easy to say. And other people say that our interests nationally always align with Israel and they're wrong. I mean, that says nothing. And he takes 2 minutes to answer this question.
The United Kingdom or France are good partners. That doesn't mean that we're always going to have aligned interests. And another thing I think is that there is, look, sometimes criticism of Israel bleeds into Jew hate. It just does. Charlie was very aware of this. By the way, Charlie was very worried about Israeli influence in American politics. He also really disliked anti-Semitism. But in the same way that sometimes criticism of the Israeli government can be expressed in a way that's anti-Semitic, it's just not the case that every criticism of Bibi Netanyahu's policy decisions leads to anti-Semitism.
This is probably the safest answer I've ever heard in my life.
Sometimes, advocates of Israel or pro-Israel people in the United States make two critical mistakes. One, on the one hand, is not delineating between America's interests and Israeli interests because they're not always the same. But the second is always conflating criticism of a particular government with Jew hatred. Because if everything is Jew hatred, then nothing is Jew hatred. I actually think Jew hatred is very bad, which is why I think we have to be very careful about not calling it's kind of like how progressives for 20 years called everything racist.
Yeah, so his whole point is what's really, really bad. Racism and anti-Semitism are really, really bad. That's why I especially hate the trigger-happy mischaracterization of all semi-right-wing positions as anti-Semitic or racist. Because most important that we can identify real racism and real anti-Semitism. Just a very boomer answer. And I'm telling you, the bio solution is going to be a hard death. It spells a hard death for boomers as a cultural and political bloc. That is going to be abrupt, and it's coming swiftly. And no one likes talking like this. It doesn't work on internet or podcasts. It only worked on network news. Oh, we have to take a hard break anyway, where they can gatekeep you. Everyone's like, well, I know our interests align sometimes with every country on earth and don't align other times with every country on earth, every one of the countries. You didn't answer what I asked. And Ali Beth should have said, no, I need an answer from you on this, JD, Vice President Vance. I need an answer. What, is it a big problem or not? And for those who say that there's some religious motivation for the tensions between mostly Christian Americans and Jewish Israel, could it be religious? Could it be this major disagreement over our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? Wait a minute, Vice President Vance. I thought you just said, quoting Mima, that with Jesus, everything will be all right. As long as you have Jesus. Well, what happened to that in your answer? I'm curious. I'm being sincere right now. The Jews don't have Jesus. The Jews killed Jesus. Are they going to be all right? And when someone celebrates the fact that they killed the God-man, that's what modern day Judaism is. That's what rabbinic Judaism is. Doesn't it stand to reason that their worldview will be bleak? You know who created the end of stories and movies that are just bleak and depressing and nihilistic? Always Jewish writers in Hollywood and in movies. And they brag about this. It's a well-known thing in Hollywood circles. You know, they read that, Billy Crystal says it in When Harry Met Sally. I read the last page of the book first because I have a Jewish fatalism. Well, of course, you killed your Messiah. You killed the God-man. Could this have an influence? A negative influence, an adverse influence on not only the way the Jews are perceived, but on the way that they actually influence the world in Israel? Couldn't this be a related, distinguishable, but related reason that people, a mostly Christian nation, particularly a Christian nation that's returning to its faith, would have to not like Jews? They reject Jesus. This is the ongoing rejection of Jesus. I know it's also that if there are any other non-Christian religion, but Judaism is unique. Yeah, it was especially good at first, but it's especially bad now. If you say I'm a Jew, that means you specially reject Jesus. So yeah, I don't think we need to dance around it. I'm not running for president in 2028. So I can, one luxury I have is I can love the truth. If you want to run for president, you can't love the truth. So I know that's a difference between JD making this answer and me making this answer, but I'll do it on his behalf. Yes, there is a good religious ethnic, but mainly religious and ethnic reason, in addition to the nationalist reason that we are this abused trade partner. We are this abused ally, our greatest ally, which never, ever favors us beneficially. We always favor them. And he's like, you could say that if you want. They are a partner in other ways. No, they're not. But you can't say anything else or it becomes Jew hatred. No, that's not true. You can just say there are religious reasons that Christians should dislike Judaism, just like there are religious reasons Christians should dislike Islam in different ways. But I would say in a more concentrated, intense, focused way. So notice the subtleties there. When Israel comes up, there's always sophistry. When Judaism comes up, there's always sophistry. It's okay to mistrust Islam. But when it comes to the other question, you can't just mistrust Judaism. You have to mistrust just whether or not Israel's a perfect ally. No. It's so much worse than that. Okay, so do we have some call-ins?
Yeah, I'm going to bring GC to the show. So let me do that right now. Go ahead, GC. You're on with Tim.
Yo.
Okay, maybe not. Let's try Steven. Hey, Steven, let me add you to the stage. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hold on.
What's
One
up?
second. How do I get back here? Oh, shit.
Yeah, you're good, man. What's your how are
Can you
doing?
hear me?
Yep, we
Yep.
got you. Couldn't hear him.
Nope.
Not
Okay.
any longer.
I think GC is back. Hey, GC, how are you? You're on. Okay. I think GC is back.
Hello?
Hey, GC, how are you? Yep. Hey, how are you? You're on.
Turn
Yeah,
down your down your volume on the radio, GC. How are you doing today?
I got it down. Oh, pretty good. How are you, man?
Cool.
So I had a couple questions, maybe not so related to the interview, but they are like theological questions, I suppose.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, did Jesus feel temptation like the exact same way that humans did in the desert?
So did he have the same faculties of the soul? Yes. So he was tempted in approximately the same ways is what all the masters teach, right? I mean, he had not only the appetitive part of the soul, he had, the concupiscible part. He had the in his intellect. Let's deal with the intellect of Jesus. He had speculative intellect, he had practical intellect, and he had all the appetitive, all the desires that we have. So yes, the answer is yes. He felt temptation in a plenary, full human way. He just never gave into it.
Okay. And I was gonna ask, was there like before the fall, was there any death whatsoever in a garden? Say like plants, animals.
Church hasn't taught on that. But what if you look at CCC? I think it's an even number. It's like 400 or 480. I'll have to check it. Don't quote me. It only addresses what we must believe is the fall caused human death, right? So that's, as an article of the faith, original sin caused human death, caused the need for a redeemer, our Lord. So yeah, did any of the animals have teeth and eat each other? You're allowed to believe no, you're allowed to believe yeah, but it's if you follow the logical progression of original sin and the things that the dubia, the 7 or 8 dubia answered by the 1909 Pontifical Biblical Commission that were raised to the level of doctrine by Pope St. Pius X, it really sounds like it's leaning toward, you make your own call, but it sounds like it's leaning toward, sin caused human death. And they mean insinuating there might have been animal death before, but we're left to be our own judge on it. The church hasn't weighed in definitively.
Okay. And so what do you say, like, did Adam and Eve look like we do today, or how does Neanderthals play into that, to like supposedly they interbred with humans, I don't know if that's true or not, but how does that work? Like, how would Adam and Eve play into that?
Play into I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know what they looked like, just because I wasn't there. But well, all we know that again, basically what we have to believe is yes, Adam wasn't born a baby and wasn't raised through a natural life or something. He was born like some sort of full man. Okay. Pious traditions sometimes will say, oh, he's 33 years because this deepens the typology with our Lord, old Adam, new Adam. But that could just be allegorical, could just help. That's what pious tradition is there for. Not all of that stuff is what you have to believe de fide. And I don't know about Neanderthals and all that. I don't really have a view on that. That's not really something I've ever weighed in on or even really thought much about, in all honesty, what they looked like.
Yeah. No. Okay. No. Yeah. That was all the questions really I had. I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, they're good questions. I'm trying to think of a call-in show I used to listen to driving to work when we first married, like Michael Savage or Mark Levin. I used to listen to both those guys. And if they'd give the Greg Popovich answer, I don't know. I've never thought about it. I'm not trying to be uppity or smart or a wise guy. I literally am just saying, I think that'd be interesting if there are any way to know. I just don't know if there's any way to know. And I've thought about it only in a very cursory, inchoate way, because I don't know who really could know. And the church doesn't teach we have to know. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to, what's it called? I used to read, radio answers. It was two priests. And then they made the questions into books that they used to. I don't know what year they used to have a radio station on, or that was even a radio station. But, I don't know.
I've heard of it.
About that kind of stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is when people weigh in and we're not, that's cool. They might have more information than me, so they might be able to give a more full answer than me, but it still doesn't mean that it's correct or you're bound to it, because whatever the church has left open to private judgment or to opine on, it left it open for a reason. Mm-hmm. Thanks for calling and asking, though. I'm sorry. Sorry I hadn't thought of it. It's something I've been thinking about a little bit more after the debate we did with Hugh Owen and his friend Dr. Thomas. Who else do we have?
Thanks for joining the show, GC. Okay, Stephen is back. So do you have us?
Can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha. Sure can.
All right. Okay, Tim and Steph, very nice to meet you. I think we spoke once, Tim, on the phone, perhaps, when I sent you that Fatima thing.
Man, I get contact
long time ago. I think I was one of your first fans. Remember? So it was stuff like that. That's from the show Misery. Remember that movie? Anyway,
yeah, Misery.
I'm your number one fan. Okay, from USD guy, the dude. Anyway, a couple of questions for you. The SSPX thing. I watched Anthony Stein and watched you guys. Taylor, not so much, but and I like John Henry Weston. First of all, this whole thing with the SSPX is absurd, given what the German cardinal guys are doing with their synodal madness. That's the first thing. Like, what do you think would be a sober reaction to the SSPX? I think there is a crisis in the church. I think it's undeniable. Secondly, the gayification of our church is maddening. I mean, I'm British American. My wife is Italian, 1000% from Naples, Italy. We've got 3 cardinals in our family on her side from the 1500s, and her relative was in the Battle of Lepanto, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
I just, I mean, my father was a U.S. naval officer career. My father would have a heart attack, and he passed on, but he would drop dead thinking that. Seeing what's in the night, he was a Knight of Malta. He would drop dead seeing this.
Of course. I
mean, what? First of all, what do we do about the SSPX? And then I'd love your take on the gayification of our church. What do we do about that? They're going to try to soften the catechism. And by the way, Steph, congratulations on the new child and everything else. And wonderful. You guys are a wonderful family. And unfortunately, we only have 2. But my wife's grandmother in Naples had 12, believe it or not.
Wow.
And she was dear friends with St. Pio. She used to take the train up to St. She was very close friends to St. Pio. In fact, St. Pio one time said to her, Delia, I know you're out there. Stop confessing. Go home to your kids. They're a great family from Naples.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But I wanted to come meet you in Mississippi. I'm here in San Diego, and you guys keep saying move to a southern state. I'm like, yeah, well, send me $50,000 because we get to go over to Italy. We got some property there, but it's like, do you know how? It cost me 50 G's just to move from Italy back to San Diego. And everything's so expensive now.
I wish I could, but you'll make.
No, I'm just kidding.
Go to www.realestateforlife.org. They really will. When you get to this part of the country, you make up 50 grand fast. I'll tell you that much.
Well, I lived in Boca Raton, Florida before. I have a real problem with humidity, as does my wife Rita.
You get used to it though. I do too. Look, I'm a native Los Angelino. The only good thing about California is the dry air that I like, but it's also terrible because plants can't live out there. So there's
the other problem is, I go to. Did you ever go to St. Therese in Del Cerro in San Diego?
I don't think. No. We just went to our local place in Alpine.
Oh, you went to Alpine? Okay, you guys stayed in Alpine when you went to law school there.
Yeah.
Well, I was an English major at USC, and then I went to Columbia Film School.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. Screenwriting, directing. Yeah.
I was there from 2009 to 2013. All right, let me get to your questions. So, is there a Christ in the church? Yes. I think it's worse than Arianism. I don't think that's
a big statement.
It's huge. It's number one crisis ever in the church. I've maintained this since before the Summer of Shame with Francis. I mean, his whole pontificate is the culmination of everything, but that doesn't mean that the Germans have basically called out the crisis in a unilateral way, in a way that they are not authorized to do. I mean, the Germans are part of the crisis, right? The German synodal way. Whereas they're basically putting a better to his money, SSPX. Like, the Germans are part of the crisis. SSPX isn't part of the crisis, but what they're doing is basically vigilantism and overstepping their bounds. Like, you can't obviously, nowhere in the church is anyone allowed to, without authorization, ordain their own bishops. So I think the better counterpoint, if you want to point out that liberals are hypocrites, which it stands to reason, I think everyone already knows, isn't the Germans, because they don't consecrate their own bishops in a schismatic way, is the CCP bishops in China. That's where there needs to be, if you're going to say, if the shoe is on the other foot, that's what you can point at, is the CCP bishops, because China really is the one writing the ticket. And
Cardinal Zen got a bad rap.
Sure he did.
Yeah.
But, that doesn't mean there's an emergency in the church, though. We have to.
Well, how close, Tim, how close do you think we are to this whole thing where they've softened some, one edition of the Bible now to lose, soften the gay commentary with scripture? I mean, when is this going down? I mean, they're trying to extend this, but it's obvious that this is what's happening. Michael Matz talked about this ad nauseum. To me, it's as obvious as you can as anyone's face. I mean, it's just right there.
Well, remember that the Nova Vulgata is the official Bible of the Catholic Church. That's never gonna have this stuff. You can make as many biblical commentaries and new translations as you want. The official one of the church is the Nova Vulgata, and they're not going to be able to change that. That doesn't mean it doesn't reflect a crisis. So I think what's happening in your mind that's representative of a lot of folks is they think, well, if there's a crisis, then there's this emergency that SSPX is pointing at. There's not an emergency of sacraments. Like, any one of us.
I agree with that.
Anytime. And that's what is the governing question. What we call in law the governing question.
Okay.
Whether or not there's some natural law, naturally suggested self-automation that they can help themselves to, ordain their own bishops. So yes, there's a crisis in the church. And yes, it has to do with your second question, gays in the dioceses, and I think women running the homes. I think that's the crisis in the church. Both the lay and the clerical patriarchies are under attack, one by gays and the other one by women. But it doesn't supply the jurisdiction that only properly identified emergency conditions could supply. So
well, let me give you one example from that parish I was telling you in San Diego. So there was a lady, unfortunately, who lost her husband, and somehow I got talking to her, and I started asking her about what she believed as a Roman Catholic. And she started saying that she was going, she had a meeting with the Democratic Party. She believed in abortion. And I'm thinking, like, most of it, because I'm always like trying to send Steph messages. Stop talking about boomers so badly, because I'm like the most conservative guy from the most conservative family, married to a very conservative Italian traditional family. And it's like, I understand the frustration with boomers, but it's like there are a few of us out there on the periphery, it's like out here in the periphery, it's like it's just like I started asking the questions, basic questions, gay marriage, abortion, and she's like on board with it. And then she said, well, I have to go. I said, where are you going? I'm going to meet the local Democratic Party. And I'm like, my head nearly exploded after spending an hour with her, thinking that I'm talking to a Roman Catholic.
Of course. Well, I'll say this to you in closing. This will be my last one with regard to, I'm sympathetic talking to the crazy lady. Yeah, cool. Move on. And it's always good talking to you. But I mean, if 4 out of 5 people do something, then that's just the way that language works. We say all. I mean,
that's the epidemic, isn't it? Isn't that the epidemic?
Yeah. Well, of course, that's the epidemic.
But we're a very small church once you take away these so-called pseudo-Catholics.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying in the JD Vance answer, is that the pseudo-Catholics don't actually count. As regards the boomers, it's kind of like if we talk about blacks or Jews or anything else.
No, I get it. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Well, God bless you, man. Thanks.
God bless your family and you too. No, take care.
God bless your family, and tell your wife I'm from my Italian part of the family. My mom's part of the family is from Acera, Italy, which is right near Naples. Right.
Che bello, perfetto. Okay, guys, take care. I hope to meet one day, Tim.
Me too, man. God bless you.
Okay, God bless you. Take care, guys.
Arrivederci. Arrivederci. Okay, now next we have Austin W to the stage, so we're gonna add you in. Hi, Austin, you're on.
Howdy. Nice to talk to y'all.
Nice to talk to you too. What's up?
So, the girlfriend and I mutually, so I'm finishing up Case for Patriarchy. She just gobbled up Ask Your Husband, and I was hoping to get steered in the right direction as opposed to courting her in my current situation. Is that reasonable? Could you do that for me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, we can give it our best crack here.
So here's the situation I'm at right now. I'm heading in my junior year. The girlfriend is going to be graduating this spring. And I know for a fact my parents would not be happy with me getting married within the next year and a half. But I've just gotten to be thinking in my noggin here. Marriage prep takes a couple months. So could I, in good conscience, ask for my girlfriend's hand in marriage from her father? And if he says yes, do marriage prep and then graduate from college and then marry her. Like, is that a good idea?
Well, there's the first couple presuppositions that if I were you, would be my presuppositions before I get to suppositions. One is that you don't want to block or dawdle on any vocational call you experience. And it's not the same kind of call that priests are called, by which they're called to the priesthood. But there is a call to marriage. And if you're feeling it with regard to another person, it involves this person-person rapport, which is different from a priestly vocation. Then timing is sensitive, and you don't want to dawdle. Dawdling, once you're certain, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, I want to walk with Jesus with this other person, we want to become one flesh. There can be, like, what would be the best way of putting it? Existential threats to the relationship by dawdling. So I think instead of pitching it as, well, it's a question of conscience, should I dawdle enough to satisfy my Gen X or Boomer parents or her Gen X or Boomer parents, depending on their ages? Their only real question of conscience is, if waiting constitutes a kind of breach of the vocation or a dawdle of the vocation, if you're confident, if you're certain, that would be my first question, right? And the other presuppositions that you might or might not be making is that wrongly, perhaps you're just supposing that her parents or your parents don't want you to get married during college. I think college is a phenomenal time to get married. I mean, is it materially different from grad school? I mean, a lot, because I've dealt with a lot of students and parents that are really against getting married as an undergrad. Very boomerish response. And they're like, at least wait until you're in grad school. You can be married in grad school. Why? Like, is there something, you're taking the 100s, 200s, 300s, or 400s? Did the classes matter? I mean, have you ever, if assuming that you're not just supposing this about her parents, your parents, have you ever asked them? I mean, I would be like, hey, you'll get the memo when I make a decision what I'm going to do.
It'll be some stupid thing like, oh, you need to make money. It'll be money related, why they shouldn't get married, all that, like this worldly stuff. I'd say this, like,
well, but money is not, we're not saying money's stupid. It's just, if your parents were planning on paying your tuition anyway, and her parents were paying her tuition anyway, I've heard parents threaten to cut their kids off if they get married in college. You can ask why. You set aside this money for me to go to college. I'm still going to finish, it's what do you, I mean, so I think that's, you don't have to make your own money while you're an undergrad in college. So why would that change if you move from dating a girl to being married to her? Have you had this conversation with either of your parents?
So not directly, but my brother, who is my 3-year senior, went through all this, and their responses are always been, it's just like, you're not out of college yet. We want you to have a good 20 years. And to put in context, my parents got married to each other. I think my dad was 30. My mom was in her upper 20s. And so from that perspective, and knowing the life that they live, that makes sense. They're not practicing Catholics. So that's another hurdle as well. And so I know for a fact that they'll be opposed. I haven't asked my girlfriend's parents at all. I think that they might be more open to it. So that's the situation I'm in.
Would you, if you knew that this woman was the woman you're going to spend you want to spend the rest of your life with, and you asked the father if you could marry her, and he said no, would you not marry her?
I'm not sure what I would do in that. I'm not sure what I would do in that situation. I would probably wait. I'm
asking is because asking the father, like, the problem is, I think not kids, but people, just to be frank, in your generation, you guys are just waiting too much for permission to do like things that you should just do if you know that's what you want to do, right? So it's one thing to sit down with her dad and, be respectful, which is what Tim and I have talked about. We're like, all our 7 daughters, they don't need to ask our permission. It would be nice if they got to know Tim a little bit, they could have a beer and they told Tim, like, this is my intention to ask your daughter to marry him, because it's kind of phony. These guys who ask the girl's dad, if my dad said no, I would have married Tim anyway. So the permission, you're not asking for permission.
So I didn't ask.
So that's why you didn't ask.
Why would you saying,
Yeah.
you're telling me that God's calling you to marry this girl, but you're going to listen to some guy if he, you're going to ask for permission. It's like if God's calling you to be a priest, but you're going to ask a neighbor down the street for permission to be a priest, right? If God calls you to the vocation, then you should do it. God says jump, you say how high, right? So if you're legit, if this is not a confidence issue, like a sublimated confidence issue in your relationship, I'm not going to be like some Freudian and say that. If you're confident in the relationship, then it only makes sense to do one thing: ask her to marry you, and respectfully tell both sets of parents afterwards. I wouldn't pull the whole electorate before you take action. I really wouldn't, because you're not, maybe in a healthier time, if we were medieval peasants and everybody's parents were Catholics and everybody's parents were the same kind of Catholics, then you could play around with that game. I still find it paradoxical, because I don't care I didn't ask Steph's dad, because I didn't give a damn what he thought about us getting married.
I didn't either. Honestly, it's like if my dad said no, my dad said no, I'd be like, okay, like, I'm still marrying this guy, whether you like it or not. You know what it's like? It's like asking your neighbor if you could borrow a cup of your own sugar. That's what asking a girl's. I mean, it's something he's really not. It's a legal fiction. He's not in the position to deny you in the first place. And the fervency of your love is kind of measured by how much you would go through for. Would you die for this woman? If you say you'd die for her, but you wouldn't just disappoint one of y'all's parents for her, then you can see the basic incongruity of the claims. Yeah, and people are saying like it's respectful to ask the guy's or the girlfriend's dad. It's really not, because it's not. You can do something respectful, like sit down and have a beer with them, invite them to dinner, and say, "I love your daughter. I've asked her to marry me. She accepted my proposal. I'm excited to be a part of your family." You can do respectful things, but don't be a phony, right? Yeah, lying is always disrespectful, and if you say, which is what I'd hope you say, if you're ready to marry a girl, hey, I'm asking him, but it's kind of like asking to borrow a cup of sugar from myself at my neighbor's door. Right? It's like, this is kind of our decision. It has nothing to do with you. It's more respectful to tell someone the truth. Like, maybe the first time you go over and meet the parents after you've gotten engaged, you wear a suit and a tie and you bring a bottle of wine. You say, hey, we want you guys to celebrate with us. And you act nice. You don't spit in the food. That's how you be respectful. But it's just one of these things. I just reject the premise altogether that that it's respectful to ask a question that you never intend to answer. I think St. Thomas calls this a simulation. When you ask a question that you already know the answer to confuse the party about like whether or not you were there. You're like, have you ever done that where you ask someone like, oh, did you go swimming already, when you saw from across the way that they were swimming? It's called a simulation. It can be deceitful. So if you're asking a question where if he answers a certain way, you're going to just do what you're going to do anyway. You're simulating that he was in a power grant, ask or askee situation. So this all sort of constitutes advice. We're not trying to say this stuff like rhetorically or whatever. We're trying to give you the advice that we give everyone. We just want these young men to understand you have a lot of power to design your life how you want to. And unfortunately, I don't think most parents in this day and age, in the secular age, are in any position to be really like squandering your opportunity through your God-given vocation. And they try to do that. Yeah. They'll give you bad advice. They'll say you have to wait for things that you don't need to wait for. If I could go back and get extra years of marriage under our belt, I would totally do that. I wish Tim and I would have gotten married instead of in our early 20s, like in our late teens, I mean, that's honestly how I feel about it. It's like, yeah, I mean, so you have more power than you think you do. If you think this girl is the one for you, then nobody has a right to tell you not to marry her.
And if they're going to cut you off tuition wise, and you feel like you need your last year of tuition, and you take a loan for 1 year or whatever. I mean, that's their prerogative. If they're going to cut you off for tuition in your senior year, well, it's like, wait, this might cost me the best girl I've ever known that God told me I was supposed to be with. So it's worth taking a loan for senior year. That's the cost of your freedom. Sometimes freedom costs something, right? It's better than being under, mom's thumb or dad's thumb or MIL's thumb or FIL's thumb for your whole life. You want to tell people how to treat you as you enter into adulthood. And it's best to do it in a ceremonious way. It'd be great if they continue paying for tuition. But if they say, hey, if you do it, we're not going to pay for tuition anymore. You say, that's fair. It's your prerogative. My prerogative is I'm getting married, and by the way, it's also my prerogative to invite who I want to the wedding and to, have my eventual children that I'm going to produce interact with whom I want. So take that into consideration before you make your decision. But that's all very confrontational, and that's not how I would exactly go about it. We're just sort of jumping to we're cutting the corners. If we were coaching you, we'd take this all more slowly and we would urge more tact. But basically, this is where it's gone for a lot of young people. This is how the pattern has been.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks so much for all this advice. So the reason why I put in there the requirement that asked the dad was that I just thought that was the Christian thing to do. I didn't realize that was just a made up societal standard.
It's really Protestant. It's like a Protestant stuff. Remember, the Catholic Church gave women the right to choose their own husbands, right? This is like the Catholic Church says a woman has to choose her own husband. I mean, we know this.
It's null. It's null if her dad chooses. So.
It's nobody's saying go in there and be like, I'm marrying your daughter, jerk, buckle up, or anything like that. That's how people who when they hear us say this, that's how they'll tend to react, like, well, that's disrespectful. No, it's respectful. This is what I want my all 7 of my daughter's future husbands to come in and say. Just be like, I love your daughter. I've asked her to marry me. I'm going to take really good care of her, and we're going to do our best to fulfill God's word. That's all I need to hear.
Yeah.
Like, that's respectful. That's manly. All this phony, like, can I marry your daughter? Like, business, when you're damn well going to marry her anyway, even if the dad says no. It's so phony.
Well, I find it disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's disrespectful. It's like, a 3-year-old's birthday party where you ask them permission. Oh, can I come over, buddy? Can I come over to your party? It's like, oh, look, your parents already invited me. I have a 3-year-old too that you're sort of half-assed friends with. We're coming over. But you do that for a 3-year-old. What's disrespectful is to do that to a grown-ass man, a 65-year-old man. Oh, could I borrow a cup of my own flour? It's like, look, he sent his daughter off to college. This is the cost of doing business. This is what the boomers begat. And, you send your daughters off to college. Yes, they're going to meet a guy, God willing, a good guy. You sound like a good guy that wants to do the right thing. And it's not going to be really under your supervision or protection as a father. That's the cost of doing business. So, yeah, if she comes back, like in Father of the Bride, the Steve Martin movie, if she comes back engaged, you just hope it's to a good guy.
Well, that's why you have your children. This is why I would tell fathers out there who are kind of recoiling what we have to say. You have your daughters for 18 years. Do your job right. If you do your job right, she's going to pick a good man for herself. That's going to be a good man. That's what those 18 years are for. That's what Tim's doing all the time with our daughters. He knows that once they're in the world, they're going to pick for themselves, and there's not anything you, Tim, can say or do about it. If our daughters pick a good guy, that's because they were raised well, they were taught well. If they pick a bad guy, then that is an indication on our jobs as parents. But that's ultimately what it boils
Well, our
down.
daughters probably aren't going to go away to college. So and they always want to know, oh, do you like him? The time to do that, I think you're missing a trick here, Steph. Our daughters aren't going to go away to college. So their guy is going to come over to our house and hang out with us and watch movies. And I'm not going to be a jerk to the guy. And we'll watch movies. We'll know him. We'll know him from the first date, second date, third date onward. And that's where the parent's opinion counts more there. You ever notice that? Before you buy into, when the woman falls in love, like the mom says in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, it's over, right? It's over. People are going to get married once they're in love. You can't really, it's not even moral to be like, can I marry your daughter? No. I'm like, what? Okay. I'm going to go get married, like Braveheart in the forest or whatever. The time where it's moral to give your opinion is on their first date. And the problem is all the boomers have all this cognitive dissonance because they're all feminists and they sent their daughters away to college. You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with this? So they want, it's like champagne taste and beer money. It just doesn't work. Their worldview is filled with cognitive dissonance. So if you want to inform your daughter's decision in a more providential, hands-on way, they got to be living at home. And you can do so from the beginning of the relationship when it's not, you're not meddling when a daughter goes on a first date with a guy and you can be like, that guy seemed rude or that guy seems dangerous. And your daughter actually wants your opinion. Once the daughter had to be her dad for herself because you sent her across the country to college, then she had to play dad for her own self. She had to take all the risks of going on a date not in her father's home. So 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later, she already assumed all the risk. Now she's like, I don't need your opinion. A father's good for being around when a daughter's on her first date. So I know this is hard for a lot of Gen X and boomers to hear, but this is the break. So no, this isn't going to be the way I run my home because I'm not sending my daughters out of my home across the country to go to college into the wilds of American campus life. No way. So it's a lot to chew on, I know. But yeah, you sound like a good guy. If you're feeling called to marriage, then pray about it to Jesus the night before you get a yes, and then go ask her. There's really one human being you have to ask for permission to get married.
Amen to that. Well, that answers my question. So thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Good luck. Yeah, tell us how this all plays out. We're
write us an email, Austin. Let us know how it works out. Henry is next to the show. Let me add you in. Henry, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Gotcha.
All right.
What's up, Henry?
So I was talking to my cousin the other day about the Byzantine Empire and how it was one of the most successful civilizations to ever exist, really. So I was kind of wanted to ask if there was a president, similar to JD Vance, or no offense to JD, but a more based Catholic that kind of ran a lot of the governmental, moral decisions or tax decisions through the church, similarly to the Byzantine Empire, how they ran everything through the church. I mean, do you think that could ever happen?
Yeah, well, I think first, I mean, again, we're just shattering molds with all these opinions here tonight. But yeah, first, I think the whole big pimp-hearted LGBTQ third of a billion person republic Leviathan of America needs to break up, right? You can't have a third of a billion people and have a moral republic or a republic at all. So once it breaks apart, whether it's in my life or my kids' life or my grandkids' lives, and we go back to subsidiarity, the central organizing principle the Catholic Church teaches that natural law discloses, then absolutely 100%. That's what you want. You want good rulers, whether it's rule by one, rule by few, rule by many. You can have good rulers in all three of those acceptable regimes. You want them making decisions based on Roman Catholicism. So yeah, that can absolutely happen once we return to having republics. But a republic, remember, Aristotle and St. Thomas says can't have even as many as 100,000 citizens. That's what both Aristotle and St. Thomas and really all of the early Republican theorists, who are all Catholics, agreed. You can't make the call unless you're in the position. So you can't have a government that's far, far away. So a lot of this stuff that we quibble about now, should we have a king? It sounds LARPy to say, should we have a king? Should we have a Catholic, sworn in Catholic segment of the Constitution, Catholic oath. All of this sounds LARPy because we know that we live in this big pimp-hearted LGBTQ Leviathan, like continent, almost hemisphere-sized joke of a republic. A republic's got to be well under 100,000 citizens, and it's not LARPy at all then to have a holy king praying to make legislative decisions, or adjudicative decisions, or executive decisions, or the same thing with a small aristocracy or republic, polity. But it's political geography is the big thing. I've been out here in the wilderness saying political geography, this is it. It's size of countries that's keeping us from having the kind of, this is why we can't have nice things, because everyone believes that that republics are, do you live in 1/3 of a billion or 1.2 billion person republic? It's a joke. Republics are supposed to be the size of the very smallest American states.
Right. And then one more thing, if you don't mind, we just found out my wife is pregnant last week with her first child, so that's exciting. But
yeah, congratulations.
One question I wanted to ask, someone asked it in a previous stream, but I don't think you got to it. What's your thoughts on vaccines?
If you look at the vaccination schedule of our 8 children, it's just like, our first kid had all of them, but the ones with the abortion stuff, and then less for our second kid, and then less with the twins, which was number 3 and 4. I think 5, 6, 7, 8, they're just like all unvaxxed.
Yep,
all
they're
together.
They're all like the last 4, I think, are unvaxxed. Yeah,
like all together. And we're not really crunchy or whatever. We're the last people eating seed oils, the last sensible people eating. So we don't get on that stuff super on board. But since we homeschool, it just doesn't make sense to vax them. So,
yeah, and after the whole COVID thing, it's like now I don't even know what they're putting in stuff.
Yeah, what's in that?
Yeah, like now I'm like, they could be putting anything in anything. Now I'm just like, I don't trust any of it. I honestly, it's like we try not to even go to doctors all that much. If there's a problem, we of course will. But it's like, I just don't, the whole medical establishment after COVID, I just am very skeptical of the whole thing.
As one should be.
Yeah.
Well, God bless, auguri, as they say in Italy. And God bless you, man. We'll pray for you and your family.
Thank you. I'll pray for you as well.
Thank you. Peace.
We'll just read some of these comments real quick, these super chats. K. Jim has said, will you ever do a stream on best arguments against an atheist?
Yeah, I should do that soon, because I used to do public debates against atheists more than any other debates.
Perfect. JD said, convert and revert here, enjoying this. Also, please pray for us getting over a recent miscarriage.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll keep your family in our prayers.
Absolutely. We'll pray for that.
God bless you guys.
That's another thing I've always kind of wanted to do, like a little thing, like maybe like a behind the scenes show for like locals ladies, that how common that is really for a lot of Catholic women. They don't really know that. So just things about birthing and things like that are more common than people.
It's got to be tough. By the grace of God, 8 kids, no miscarriages, but it's a lot of people out there experiencing this, and we're sorry for you.
Right. I'm a revert confirmed this Easter. Not sure if I should stay at my Novus Ordo parish where I have a great friends, or move to a TLM near me. TLM feels more edifying, but the community has been great for my faith.
You can do, week A, week B, 1 week on, 1 week off. You can do it however you want. This is what we always tell people. In an age of crisis, rather than just outright disobedience, what you got to do is get a little creative. You got to get a little creative. Like, I don't want my kids seeing the Novus Ordo, but we have a way of getting around this. Even though we're not going to do the 2-hour drive every week to the TLM in New Orleans. So we do, we have end arounds. And if this is a real problem for you, then you don't have to leave forever. Just do week A, week B, week A, week, And I know people say don't church hop, but I'm not with them. You see I'm not trying to be some contrarian. I just don't think the conventional wisdom is very, that's like, there's been something sort of way off beat about every one of my answers to all these, telling the guy, don't ask the father-in-law, I mean, the future father-in-law's permission. I'm talking about, you know, don't get vaxes. We're talking about what else? What were the other questions? About boomers. I mean, but we just
you'll like the last one. It's
Okay.
a confrontation. He was very mad at you.
Good.
Okay, here we go. Zamandi said, done with this channel and you for good. I support our vice president. Just remember what the alternative was to this ticket. I guess you have gone to the dark side. Get a real job.
Well, there's a lot of thoughts in there. I'll just say, God bless, man. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. I don't know what you're obsessed about. Upset about. I don't think I've gone to the dark side as far as I know. I gave propers to Vice President Vance where I thought he gave 2 good answers. I thought most of his answers were really insipid and boring and cautious and safe and smacked of heyday for boomer and Gen X politics, which is probably why you liked him. It sounds like maybe a boomer, but hey, God bless, man. Whatever. I don't even know. I don't even know why you're upset, but we're happy to have you back if you revert to the R for R channel. Come back anytime. God bless you guys. Weird string of questions, but we're praying for all of you, even the guy that's piecing out on us. God bless you. Thanks for supporting this channel. We're kind of working through having the call-in feature. I think it's kind of fun. And we're going to do our more debate shows. Hey, if you don't like anything I've said within a week or a month or even a couple of years, call in and debate me. That's what we're going to start doing more often, because I think that's an important part of maintaining your bona fides as a guy that's talking. You should be able to take off the cuff challenges, and you should be willing to hear people that disagree with you. I always want to hear people that disagree with me. Just there's going to be an answer usually, unless you convince me, which is always a possibility. God bless you guys. Des Volt.